Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the Huawei G8. I just recently reviewed Huawei's flagship, the Mate S, and now it's time for their premium mid-range offering, the G8. And I gotta say, I have a few mixed feelings about it, because there are a lot of things that I really like about it, but then again, there are a few things that I'm just not that happy with. What exactly those are, we'll find out in my full review, so let's damn it. Okay, let's start off with the design and build quality of the Huawei G8. Size comparison as always. First, here with the Sonic Xperia Z3, a 5.2 incher. As you can see, it is taller. It is also noticeably wider. In terms of actual thickness, there's not that much of a difference. But let's compare it with something more of the same size, the OnePlus One. In terms of length, they are quite similar. Not really that much of a difference. Also the width, but the thickness is the biggest difference for me, because on the OnePlus One we have this small little border here which you're holding onto, which makes the device feel actually a lot thinner than it is, because you don't really feel the whole thickness of the device. That is not quite the case on the G8, because this rim here is a lot thicker, and the whole device therefore feels actually a lot thicker than the OnePlus One. So the whole device feels a lot more boxier than it maybe would have to be if there would have been bigger curved here. But that's a little bit of a minor thing. Other than that, the build quality is great. Not any squeaking, not any bending, very solidly built. The aluminum can be a little bit slippery, and due to the quite big size of the device, it's a bit hard to manage it, so you will mostly need two hands. One hand use was very hard. Here we have plastics. I guess that is to improve the reception here as well, even though we have antenna bands here, but I guess that's the thing. Here we have the camera, dual tone flash, headphone jack on the top, and the microphone. On the left side we have the SD card and SIM card dual tray. Here we have the speaker cutouts, but only a speaker is here. Micro USB. About the buttons, they are a little bit mushy, but placed absolutely great, because this is pretty much the perfect position. No real complaints here. Like I said, they are a little bit clicky, but a little bit mushy after all. So keep that in mind. We have a fingerprint sensor on the back that works really fast, but the device itself just doesn't turn on as well. Because as you can see here, I tap, it turns on. I tap, it turns on. But the screen itself, if I just do, for example, here a double tap with the Sony, you will notice the difference here. The screen needs noticeably longer to turn on. So even though the fingerprint scanner is super fast, as you can see now, it just doesn't turn on the screen that fast. But that is a minor thing. Overall, they did a great job. It feels a little bit on a boxier, bulkier side, but in terms of just the design itself, it looks really beautiful in my opinion. We also have the 2.5D glass here. We have a notification LED that is actually multicolor. It's a little bit harder to see in bright sunlight, but other than that, they did a good job, besides it feeling a little bit more on the boxy side. Let's check the screen, and I can already tell you the screen is absolutely excellent. 1080p IPS, extremely sharp. One of the sharpest 1080p screens I've ever seen. Really even better than on the Mate S in terms of sharpness. The white point is great. We still have color temperature control, so you can make it very cold in this case, and also very warm. I just slightly adjusted it towards the colder, but really great. So the white point is absolutely amazing. The blacks are very deep, not really any light bleed, but it's just deep for an IPS level. The colors are vibrant, they are vivid. They don't quite pop like an AMOLED display, but they are therefore quite natural. So I'm absolutely pleased with the calibration. Also, the viewing angles are absolutely solid. Maybe it doesn't look always like this on the screen, but absolutely fine. The maximum brightness was also absolutely fine. Not maybe great, but it did get the job done quite nice, and no problems here. So let's check the sound. So, about the placement of the speaker, I gotta say they did a totally fine job, because I never blocked it, neither in landscape nor in portrait mode, so all is fine here. About the speaker quality itself though, maximum volume could be a little bit higher, especially in YouTube and so on. I sometimes wish for maybe 10% more. In a closed normal room, no real issues, but if you are maybe in a slightly noisier environment, it wasn't always just loud enough. About the sound itself, not a whole lot of bass, the mids were okay, but slightly harsh highs, especially if you cup it like this. it reflected it. It wasn't really tinny or so, but a little bit more on the flat side and a little bit harsh. So the sound is quite good, but not great. So the performance now. And this is my main complaint about this device. Because here in Chrome, as you can see, absolutely smooth, absolutely fine, responsive, quite okay, no problems. But once we go, for example, now in Naked Browser, which is using the web engine, the normal one, you will see this is not really that smooth. And just so you don't say this is a crappy browser, I use the default browser and it runs exactly the same. So the default Huawei browser does exactly the same. And the same thing happens here as well in an app, because this app is supposed to use the Chrome engine if you render this. But as you can see, this is not smooth. So yeah, that is not that great. If we open now the app within the browser, now it should be using Chrome, and you can see it's okay, but also not amazing. So the performance is not that great overall. In apps like, for example, Twitter, it was fine. And for example, Phoenix, which also uses the older rendering engine, you can see as well, this is not smooth. If you are in the app itself, then things are fine again, as you can see here. Now things are smooth. But every time you have to something render a site, like a web page, it seems not that smooth at all. Same here, Google Plus, a little bit on the choppy side, but it's usable, not really that much complaints here. Let's try a game. And I'm using usually Riptide, but in this case I will use Asphalt just to show something, because on the highest details it wasn't really that pleasurable to play with. If you use the second highest level, then it was very smooth, no problems at all. Also Riptide, as I usually try it, works fine. So most of the games work okay, but just not on the highest level. Totally on a playable level at all times, but as we will see soon, there is definitely room for improvement. So it's not the best performing SoC. It's a mid-ranger, but there's only so much you can expect. But it's definitely, overall, the performance of this device is actually worse than the Snapdragon 410. And we are using the Snapdragon 615 here, which is very odd, because the 410 never had any problems within the browser, never had any problems in the default browser, not in Chrome, not in any app. It was always smooth. Just the gaming performance, of course, was not a flagship level, but the overall performance of the 410 is definitely a lot better than it is here. Of course, most 410 devices only have maybe like 1 GB of RAM, but if you have a device with at least 2 GB of RAM, then you will be on the superior side with the 410. The 615 is only better here in this case in terms of multitasking, because we have 3 GB of RAM, and as you can see here, this is not extremely smooth. It's totally playable, but I've seen better things. So multitasking itself is fine, but once again, what I don't like so much in terms of the performance, or in this part, is the odd recent apps menu. But as you can see, the rest is fine. So once again, yeah, I'm not quite sure what else to say. So I'm definitely not really happy with the performance. Not quite sure. And I'm pretty much blaming the 615 for it. I don't think Huawei could have done something a lot better, because I've seen a lot of devices already with the 615 and all seem to have the same problems. About the battery life, a full charge needs slightly more than 2 hours, which is absolutely fine. And the battery life is absolutely great. 5.5 hours of screen on time over the course of more than 1 day. Here we have 5 hours and 12, 1.5 days, which for me actually is already 2 days. 4 hours and 45 over the course of 1 day. This was with heavier use, with more gaming and so on. And here 4 hours and 15 over the course of, once again, what is for me 2 days. All that was with a brightness between 35 and 40%, which is totally fine, because this device gets very bright. And you see, I only use 75%. Now usually I always use all devices with 100%, but as you will be seeing here, it's just too bright for the camera, so I stick to 75. It's not the very brightest screen, but already quite bright very early. So what about the software now? Let's check that. We still have the tray here with the access shortcuts. Not everything is available, otherwise that we saw on the Mate S. Other than that, quick settings are adjustable in terms of the order, but you can't really delete anything. You also have the brightness slider. All that works well. Like I said, the recent apps menu is one of my gripes of the software here. I just don't like it so much, because this is not convenient to use. But the actual settings menu is okay. You find everything you want to. We are using Android 5.1 with the EMUI 3.1. There's not a whole lot of gimmicky features. Everything is fine. You can adjust the navigation bar, you have some movement gestures, you can lock the things. There is still this little bit of annoying thing within the settings for the battery life, where it will ask if apps will be shut off, but in this case it was actually manageable at all times. A lot of bloat apps, but you can uninstall pretty much all of them. As you can see here, a lot of apps and so on, but just don't mind it. Software, the more and more I use it on more devices, I get more and more used to it. It's still not my most favorite Android skin of all. Also, the update politics aren't that great. I'm not quite sure. Maybe Marshmallow will get onto this device. It was announced on a few devices. I think this one will still get it, but not quite sure when. Root support is questionable. It could maybe come at some point, but I also wouldn't really rely on any custom ROM support. So now let's get into the camera. I gotta say the camera is quite similar to the Mate S in some regards, especially the autofocus. It is on the slightly slower side, but actually was quite reliable, even though in this case a lot of times on the viewfinder I thought the picture was very sharp, and then later on the monitor I noticed it was slightly out of focus. But other than that, nice contrast, very good exposure. If sharp, then really sharp. Colors pop. Everything is really nicely balanced, no complaints here at all. The low light capabilities were actually better than I expected, because a little bit of noise and a little bit of blur, but not as much as I would have expected. So the overall quality is just for pictures is really good, but not great or fantastic. And the video qualities itself are actually a little bit lower. Same as on the Huawei Mate S already. Autofocus doesn't seem to work for some reason, and in this case even the manual focus had a little bit of issues for me, because even if I did the tap to focus, it didn't quite manage to get it right. Other than that, it is smooth, exposure is okay, but it's definitely not the very best video experience from what I've seen so far. Okay, that's it for the detailed part. Okay, time to wrap things up. In terms of design and build quality, they did a really good job. The device feels very premium, very substantial, nice smart button placement, very nice curves, feels good in the hand. The only minor things that I am not so happy with is the fingerprint reader placement. I'm just not the biggest fan of on the back, and the device could feel a little bit thinner because it feels a little bit boxy in the hand. The curves just could have been a little bit bigger. The display though is absolutely fantastic, extremely sharp with very nice whites due to having color temperature control. The black is also very solid for a non-AMOLED device. Colors absolutely perfectly calibrated, really nice, natural but still very vibrant and vivid. Viewing angles are solid, maximum brightness is also absolutely fine, so they did an amazing job on the display. The sound maybe not quite so much, because mostly loud enough, not maybe in all cases. I would wish for a little bit more, but the sound was a little bit more on the flat and harsh side in terms of the highs, not much bass and mids. It totally gets the job done, but it definitely could have been also a lot better. The performance is the hit and miss here. I'm just not that happy overall. If you just use things like Twitter and maybe the Google browser and those things, you could get away with it quite okay. And if you maybe aren't the person who is such a hater of lag, then this device will perform good enough, because the multitasking and all that, also gaming, was totally fine. But once you enter an app that uses the old web and the rendering engine, then the performance will just get diminished. Google Plus felt a little bit laggy and janky. So overall it was a little bit sluggish, and I've seen this on a few other devices right now, also using the 615, so I definitely blame that one. The battery life though is absolutely solid, great charging times, and the battery life with 5 hours plus of screen on time over the course of 1 day and easy 4 hours plus on 2 days. I gotta say, great job. Standby drain was also really good. No complaints here at all. A really fantastic job. The software is a thing that still a lot of people don't like so much. Also their update politics. But I at least gotta say, the more and more I use Huawei devices, the more I get used to it. Not that I really like it, but I don't really mind it that much either. It gets the job done. It has all the needed features that I want to have from a device, and not really too much annoying things anymore. At least in this case, the battery management wasn't that annoying anymore as it was on the Mate S. Now, for the camera, I gotta say, for pictures, absolutely fine, on a very good level, not quite great, but very solid. No complaints here. It should be good enough for pretty much all the people that aren't really super high into photography. But then there's the video quality that I'm not so happy. Didn't really seem very sharp, seemed a little bit wobbly. Autofocus didn't work, and even if manual focus, it didn't really work out either. The exposure and everything else was quite okay. So if you just want it for pictures, Absolutely solid. If you want it for video, then not so much. So this brings me to the end of this review. Is it a great device or is it a good device? What is it? First of all, about the price. Here it costs about 350 right now, so it's definitely already on the higher segment of the mid-range level. But of course it is a premium mid-range, and this is obvious. Once you hold it in your hand, this device just screams pure quality. Solid feel in hand, great display, totally solid sound, battery life is great, so everything is great. So on a very high level. The only thing where I just won't put it on the high mid-range level is the performance, and this is still what just makes it a very premium, okay, mid-range phone, and that is what it is. If they could manage to improve the performance, which I highly doubt, then this device would get my high recommendation if the price slightly falls. But as for the price right now, with the performance issues, I am just not so okay recommending it. But once again, I have to say one thing: if you want a really premium feeling device and the price is still okay for you, you don't mind the issues so much, and you aren't the person that can stand lag, because I know there are a few people that can't stand Android lag at all and they switch to Android or maybe the iPhone. But then there are people that say, I'm at that age that I don't mind a little bit of lag here and there. And for those people who want something really flashy, amazing, nice looking and premium feeling one, then this device is totally fine for. But as for right now, it just doesn't get my highest recommendation because of the few downsides I said. So like I said, pretty much great in everything, just video quality not so great. It feels a little bit boxy, which isn't really an issue. And the performance, once again, with the update politics that you have to see around. So don't expect Marshmallow to arrive early. So that was my review of the Huawei G8. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up, reshare this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave me any comments and questions if you have anything to say. Okay, this was it. Okay, until next time, bye.